Hi, everyone. This is Joni McGarry. Thank you so much for tuning in. Before we get to the show, I'd like to tell you about something that's been a total game changer for me, and that something is crowd health. If you're paying huge premiums for health insurance and you're feeling like you have no alternative, crowd health might be your way out. I never in a million years thought I'd walk away from health insurance. It seemed stupidly risky, but Crowd Health changed that for me. It's not insurance, it's a crowdfunding platform that helps members cover each other's healthcare costs, and it works brilliantly. Members pay a $60 monthly membership fee, and then once a month, you're asked to help fund another member's expense. You always know the maximum ask up front, and most months you are not asked for that maximum. I'm saving a ton of money, and I'm confident that in the event of a large medical bill, Crowd Health will have my back. They've funded 99.9% of all member requests over the last 5 years since they've been in existence, and that's a far better track record than most insurance companies. There are no restrictive networks and no enrollment periods, so you can join anytime. You could join today if you wanted. As long as you're under 65 and relatively healthy, you would qualify for membership. So visit joincrowdhealth.com to learn more. Their member guide is transparent and a very quick read. There is no fine print. Use code JONI, JONI, for a discount on your first 3 months if you do decide to join. And check the show notes for my interview with Crowd Health CEO Andy Schoonover. I have one regret about Crowd Health, and that is that I didn't find it sooner. So check it out. Now let's get to the show. I'm talking today with researcher and writer Debbie Lerman. Debbie is the author of the excellent book, The Deep State Goes Viral: Pandemic Planning and the COVID Coup, and she is a prolific writer on Substack. We talk today about why she believes that the tyranny rampant during the COVID response did not stop when the current administration was voted in, and that it has simply been repackaged. We talk about why any administration, regardless of party, is wittingly or unwittingly advancing the agenda of oligarchs, which is never to our benefit. We talk about the peril of selective resistance, that is, staying quiet about something your team is doing that you would have found completely unacceptable if done by the quote, other side. The main reason I do this podcast is to continue to learn and to open my mind and to listen to all sorts of ideas. My conversation with Debbie did not disappoint. It opened my mind to some new ideas, and it really made me think about how grassroots coalitions are sitting ducks for manipulation and fracture by the power structure. The same playbook is used over and over. It reminded me of the necessity of keeping open and honest dialogue with people of opposing views and having the courage to continue to seek truth and speak truth to power. I think you'll enjoy this discussion. I learned a lot from it. And as always, Debbie is a great conversationalist. I'd like to welcome researcher and writer Debbie Lerman to the show. Hi, Debbie. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Joni. Thanks so much for having me.
It's so good to see you again. You've been hard at work since our last conversation, trying to figure out the world, trying to figure out this post COVID era where things have seemed to have changed on the surface, but maybe not really changed at all. And I read with interest your recent article called Cheering the Militarization of Everything, which can be found on your Substack, which I'll link to in the show notes. Let's talk about that article because it was riveting and terrifying and kind of a wake-up call to the tyranny of COVID, whatever that was, is not over. It's just starting to take a different form. So let's go. Let's just talk about that article.
Okay. I think what I really wanted to convey in that article is what you said, somewhat what you said, which is that it never ended. It never, there was no change. So um, I'm trying to point out that right before and right after the elections, which are what many people regarded as a big turning point, entering in, a golden age.
Like Trump
Everyone's
was gonna come in and roll back all this tyranny that we blamed on the Biden administration, that kind
yeah,
of thing. Yeah, go
right.
on.
And RFK, and they're gonna come, and transparency, and no more vaccine, we're going to address the vaccine injuries. We're going to address, the legal loopholes and illegal maneuvers that were used during COVID, the states of emergency, all that stuff. But it was very, very clear, if you actually were paying attention, that none of that was going to happen, because right before and right after the election, Trump signaled very, very clearly. And when I say Trump, I just mean um, the entire apparatus, with Trump as its front,
Mhm.
is just an actor in this whole thing, on behalf of the global public-private partnership cartels that are running everything. So they ran everything during COVID. There's no reason why they would all of a sudden stop running things just because there's a so-called Republican, like there's some kind of change of so-called regime. That's
Mhm.
that's what they use to distract us, is the Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, all the binaries,
Mhm.
uh, are used to make people hate each other, fight each other, think that the problem is each other. The problem is not each other. The problem is not us. So if we could all just figure that out and unite against the power structures that are the problem,
Mhm.
I think that would we could go a long way in. Everybody asked me to solve the problem. I'm not going to say we're going to go a long way to solve the problem. Solving the problem is huge. First, we have to identify it. So the intention of the article about the militarization is, let's first identify the problem and let's stop with the fantasies. Let's stop with the heroes. Let's stop with the idolization. Let's stop with thinking that something is different than it was during COVID, because it's not. And so what I used was, I just pointed things out that were happening right before, during, and after the election, but nobody on the side of the medical freedom and people that I was affiliated with during COVID wanted to hear, and definitely did not want to pay attention to. And that's why, and didn't want to publish anything that had to do with that. So, go ahead.
I was gonna say, let's take a step back for a second, because when you start this article, you talk about when COVID happened, you were in NPR listening, New York Times reading, as many of us were, believing the narrative. You just take your mainstream media and believe it. Then everything was shattered, and this coalition of people was formed,
Mhm.
coming from very many walks of life, and everyone was determined to restore freedom of speech, to restore freedom of movement, to really get to the bottom of this tyranny. And we felt like it was a global cabal that was pushing this tyranny via this administration. But I think there was also a lot of, and who could resist, blaming the administration itself, the Biden administration, as being the bad guys. And people conveniently ignored the fact that Trump was the person who got the ball rolling with Operation Warp Speed, et cetera. And so then Trump comes in and everyone's voting for him because they feel like he is going to put Bobby into office. He's going to restore the First Amendment rights that have been taken away from him, all these things. And so now that coalition is looking very different. And I think that's the point you're trying to make here, is that happens. And arguably, I understand the impulse. You want to make sure you're supporting, quote, the people that you have helped put into office that you believe are going to be making change for you. And I think there's a grace period with that, but the grace period ended pretty quickly, I think. And people didn't look like you were looking under the hood um, of the car. And you were, and you saw all the executive orders getting put into place that just took the COVID tyranny and morphed it into another area. Yes?
Yeah.
All right. Can
Yeah.
you talk can go and did you see that right away, or did you
I
take a
saw it.
moment to
Yes,
to
I saw it right away. I didn't vote in this
okay.
election because I knew that there's no point in voting. Anybody who thinks that voting is going to change something,
I know that now.
unfortunately, is it's such a huge waste of time and energy. Like, I don't mind it if people think that this is gonna make a difference, but using your time and energy for people who are e all equally bad. They're all equally bad. Biden was, I mean, he whatever, the was a zombie. But anybody in his administration is the same badness as anybody in the Trump administration, because they're all run by the same global public-private cartel. It's the same thing. There's no
Yeah.
difference. I mean, Well, there might be different factions within, like, so
Mhm.
certain, billionaire tech moguls and certain, global corporations might be vying for more control and more power, right? And they might
Mhm.
use different administrations to vie for whatever pieces of the global resource and energy pie that they want. They might be vying for it. I don't know. But I do know that they're all this that they none of them are on my side, and I know that no politician is on my side. They are
Right.
all bought and sold. There might be 1 or 2, maybe, in the entire Congress of the United States who are not bought and sold completely.
Right.
And so my sadness is that it's a waste of people's time and energy instead of just finding out the truth and pointing it and not taking it personally, and it's not a personal attack if I say that, Trump is just as bad as Biden, and if you voted for Trump or if you voted for Biden, it's the opposite. It's saying, "Let's get out of that. Let's get out of the
Let's get out of
matrix,"
that binary.
and let
It's
and it's used against us, and so the reason that I saw it from the beginning is because there was nothing different that was happening throughout the Biden administration, throughout the election. I wrote huge articles about how when RFK Jr. stopped his independent campaign and threw in his hat with Trump. That was totally contrived, completely manipulated and controlled event. And the people who were leading it, the Maha as an entity itself is a PR political um, public-private partnership. It has absolutely nothing to do with medical freedom, like zero. Negative 0, because it's actually acting against it, and so and when I published those articles, I was shunned and I was, censored,
Mhm.
and so that, Joni, was probably the biggest crisis from all the whole COVID crisis, where I lost or, where it was very difficult for me to interact for many years with my friends, with my family who were not aware of what was happening
During COVID.
during
Like
COVID
yes, the first
and
wave of loss of friends.
the first wave of
Mhm.
loss of friends and the first wave of censorship by people who I had trusted. Okay, so like you said, the New York Times and NPR, but that whole ecosystem
Mhm.
of the media all of
And
a sudden was
institutions, all of it.
all of
Yeah.
it, all the institutions, everything. Then all of a sudden I find myself in with a wonderful group of people who see this, understand what's happening, and call themselves the medical freedom movement. And all of a sudden, when I start pointing out that the same thing is happening with RFK Jr. joining Trump and all the people in Maha and that entire structure is is a contrived structure. It's not real and it's not doing anything good. It's actually there in order to cover up, dissipate, and completely disband the populist, nonpartisan power that we had as the medical freedom movement. So that was the job of Maha. They did a really good job. But when I was pointing that out, I was censored
Mhm.
and I was, an persona non grata. So people didn't want to hear from me or talk to me who had loved everything that I had to say about COVID
It and
and
it
all the research. And I did the same research. I did the same analysis because
Mhm.
my analysis is just about power. It's just about power
Right.
structure. And it's about the legal framework that the certain power cabals put in place in order to enable them to operate outside of the legal system, outside of the constitutional system. It's that's what it's not partisan, it's not conservative, it's not liberal, it's not capitalist or socialist. It's none of the binaries. It's just power, and it's just totalitarianism. And how is totalitarianism operating within the political system, and how is it trying to take advantage of us? And how is it trying to make us so that what they fear the most is popular uprising.
'Cause there are so many more
Or
of us than they,
there's so many more of us, right? So that's what
yeah.
totalitarians always throughout history and forever have always feared, and that's what they work the hardest to prevent. And so they can prevent it using brute force, or nowadays they can use fifth generation warfare, which is propaganda and censorship.
And
And
the
my
algorithm.
And the algorithm which
Yeah.
does that for them, right?
Mhm.
So the
Yeah.
algorithm, it does the censorship and the propaganda. to billions of people around the world, and it's very, very effective.
Well,
And so the people who I thought, because people saw others getting manipulated by the algorithm during COVID, that they would be aware or at least be willing to discuss whether maybe there was some manipulation going on now also,
mhm,
because they were being herded into a certain position that was not a populist uprising against power. It was political, it was partisan, it was one sided, and it was not taking into account all the continuity of totalitarian measures that was happening throughout COVID, after COVID, before the election, after the election, and leading up to today. So to me, that was probably even a bigger trauma than COVID.
I can
Uh,
yeah, and I totally your article helps walk through the pieces put into place after the election, and you talk about the executive orders, and that would be help illustrate your point if you want to talk about that, this continuity. And when you talk about totalitarian structures, um, frameworks that allow power to operate above the Constitution, above the rule of law, above the sovereign nations.
mhm,
I would also point out is that it transcends topics, right? So
yeah,
COVID was the topic at the time, and so you talk about in your article AI and that kind of thing being the topic now. Talk to me about those executive orders, and how you observed them, and you're making your case of the continuity of a supranational power, not in our
mhm,
best interest, using this administration as a tool.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. So what I learned during COVID is um, that totalitarianism is a global public-private partnership scale, meaning that it is global corporations using the military-industrial complex and the intelligence agencies of multiple countries through NATO, through the Five Eyes,
What
and
are the 5 eyes for people who don't know?
the Five Eyes are the 5 English-speaking countries that have a special, intelligence alliance called the Five Eyes. So the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and, the UK.
Okay.
All operate as sort of one giant intelligence conglomerate,
Mhm.
of course, with the Mossad as well. So, what I learned was that, uh, th using legal structures of various countries, like emergencies. So emergencies are the most important tool for a totalitarian leaning interest to subvert democratic legal processes.
And you're
That-
talking about states of emergencies that have been declared by sovereign country leaders, and
Yes.
especially in the case of post right after Trump was elected, he declared a number of states of emergency.
Yeah, well, I was gonna go back to COVID and say, so what I learned during
Okay.
COVID
Yes.
is that the way that all of the laws were suspended and we had no rights, and it continues to today in terms of the, countermeasures, which are the vaccines and all the medical, products and procedures that they used against us. We are still in a state of emergency for COVID, which RFK Jr. can revoke today, in 1 second if he wants to. He can't because he's beholden to Trump, and Trump is beholden to the cabal. But legally, he can. So
Right.
legally, we're in state of emergency for COVID. Now, what does that state of emergency mean? And what did all of the states of emergency during COVID mean? It meant that there was no legal recourse. You could not go to court and say it's illegal for them to quarantine people. It's illegal for them to close schools. It's illegal for them to lock people up in hospitals and not let us see them, or not let the people out, or give them remdesivir even though they write on their arm in magic marker, "No remdesivir." You know? So,
And close
no.
businesses and restrict movement and all of those things.
Yeah, so there's no legal recourse because it's a state of emergency. So the state of emergency just completely subverts all of our civil rights. And that's actually why I consider the the COVID resistance to be a civil rights movement,
Hmm.
uh, because it was about our civil rights, and it was about how our civil rights were curtailed. A lot of them had to do with medical issues, but they were our civil rights, and it was also free speech, and it was freedom of assembly. And so that's what they had to crush, is they had to crush the civil rights aspect of it, meaning they had to subvert everybody's attention from the fact that they had destroyed and ignored and subverted the Constitution and the laws and say, "Oh, it was Biden," right? So I learned that the states of emergency were an important tool and that there were laws in the books that they had put in there, like the Emergency Use Authorization and the PrEP Act, that also allowed them to subvert any kind of regulatory or legal um, oversight. So
Well, and
once
also
those,
any kind of, ability to sue for damages. If you're
yes,
injured by anything that happened, you can't sue because it's a state of emergency and there's the PrEP app and the EUA.
that's right,
Yeah.
and that has not changed.
No, and the courts will not help us. But you go on.
Courts can't help us.
Yeah,
The courts can't help us because that's the law.
right.
It's not a legal law. If our representatives and our, congresspeople and our elected officials who we cheered and who are supposed to save us actually were interested in our best interest, they would just repeal the PrEP Act.
Right.
So the PrEP Act can be repealed. It cannot be overturned by a court. It can't be, um, it can't oppose any state laws. It's a completely unconstitutional law.
And here we
Um
are a couple years into the administration almost with the power to do lots of things, and that has not been done. So it's very telling, but go on.
Right, and to the yeah, so continuing with that continuity, so those states of emergency continued, nothing's happened, but let's say even before the election, the first thing was that Trump met with Bill Gates and was very excited about extending the kind of, rapid approval and legal protections that were given to the COVID measures, which Trump now calls the greatest military achievement of all time, uh, to other medical products, like to AIDS vaccines, for instance, which is something that Bill Gates is very interested in. AIDS vaccines is something that Fauci worked on for 5 decades. He got about $5 billion every 10 years by coming to Congress and saying, "Oh, we couldn't find it. We didn't know. We can't get a vaccine for AIDS. We need more money."
Mhm.
Every 10 years for 50 years. There's no such thing as a vaccine for AIDS. But the only way that they're gonna get a vaccine for AIDS is if they do the same thing that they did for COVID, which is use the EUA, Emergency Use Authorization and PrEP Act, which subverts the entire legal and regulatory system in order to get some products out to the market that are completely unregulated and completely not safe and not effective.
And
So that
and
was
this meeting that you talked about, what surprised me that you cited in the article, it was 3 hours long, which people knew about, but there's no record of it. There's no documentation of what was really said in that meeting, and I find that interesting.
and Susie Wiles was there.
Yeah.
I didn't mention that because people use Susie Wiles now as kind of like a Fauci figure, like she's in charge. She's part of the apparatus that's in charge.
Mhm.
Uh, and I don't like pointing to specific individuals because it's, as we discussed in our previous discussion, it's the happy birthday town of it's the entire system that's
Right.
doing. But anyway, yes, so he met with Bill Gates even before the election. It came up that we need to extend these emergencies and we need to extend these illegal laws in order to cover other things that Bill Gates and other people like that might be interested in. Okay, so
Which
that's
is
Trump meeting with Bill Gates. Bill Gates, who the medical freedom movement very much considers a villain, but
sure.
for some reason it's fine for him to meet with him and say, "Yeah, we definitely need to extend these kinds of emergencies to things like AIDS."
Which is,
That's
it illustrates again, like, even if you believed that COVID really was an emergency and they put all these things into place, now we have a situation where there is no I'm not saying that I'm not saying anything about AIDS as an entity or anything. I don't know enough about it and what this current situation on the ground is. But to say, "Oh, we have this apparatus in place now, we can use it for other things." Anyone who would really have been opposed to that apparatus would be like, "We're not doing that again. We're gonna shut that down, and we're moving on." but yet this is now in the toolbox being lauded by this administration. And
That's right.
that's just one simple example that you point out in your article that I found powerful. It's very powerful.
Yeah. So that was an example from right before the election. The day after the election, as you mentioned, Trump declared a bunch of states of emergency.
Tell
A
us more
state of
about that.
emergency, yeah. So states of emergency are the worst, most dangerous states that one can have in a democracy. So it is directly contradictory to a democracy to be in a state of emergency. So states of emergency either need to not exist at all in a democratic system or be used extremely, extremely sparingly in the case of a massive nuclear attack on the country. Maybe, I don't know.
Well,
Maybe
I
in that.
think yeah, the problem is if a state of emergency is part of the toolkit, it's gonna get used. It's just
Exactly.
so it's a really tricky thing, and
Well,
I
so
don't
that's why I'm saying it would be better if we didn't have it.
right,
It shouldn't exist because
right.
once it exists, it's gonna be abused, and in fact, I believe that it's put in place and it is in order to be abused.
Mhm.
And so the day after the election, Trump declared a state of emergency for immigration because of the whole immigration situation. I'm not even gonna go there, and I'm not gonna talk about what he is or isn't doing about immigration, and for energy. Now, I've asked people ever since the election, "Did you know that we're in all these" and he other states of emergency over the coming days. We're now I think he declared more states of emergency than any other president has ever declared. Donald Trump, our liberator, our savior,
Mhm.
the savior of democracy, has declared more states in which the Constitution and the laws don't apply than any other president. Now, what does the state of emergency for energy mean? For me, that was the most interesting one, an important one, because first of all, what does that mean? We're in a state of emergency for energy. Nobody thinks that we are. We are. There's no energy emergency. We're not paying high prices for energy. There's not
We
a
might be
less
soon, but we weren't then.
right, and so it turns out that the people who actually run the government, which is the giant public-private partnerships that include the tech companies right now, and so during
Well,
COVID, it was
look who was sitting there behind him, right? The tech bros
mhm,
came over to the Trump side, and everyone thought, "Wow, that's great," It's just the different oligarchy, so they would have a great interest in this. Tell us why.
yeah, so they were running things during COVID. So biotech, which is the pharmaceutical company, and the tech companies, are the ones who have the most control over uh, advertising, over media, over social media, and over propaganda and censorship. And over surveillance and control. So, aside from states of emergency, what we learned during COVID is that the totalitarian structures want to, in order to avoid a public uprising, they need to propagandize us and censor us, and they also need to surveil and control us through um, these networks of surveillance. The digital surveillance networks that they've been working on for a long time, and which in COVID really came to the forefront with the digital passports, and the vaccine passports,
Mhm,
in which one's health status became a public matter that
mhm.
everybody should be protesting that, first of all, and that they were going to then be able to and did use them as tools to curtail our freedoms, to curtail our rights, to curtail our I don't even like to say freedoms because people think that's some kind of an extreme statement, just to curtail our very basic constitutional and legal rights, like our rights to travel and our rights to, enter into business establishments. And so that was a very, I think, poignant example of how digital surveillance mechanisms can be introduced as a part of an emergency.
To keep us all safe.
Every has to keep us all safe. We have to make sure that we know who has COVID and who doesn't have COVID and who got vaccinated 5 times and who got vaccinated 10 times and who didn't get vaccinated, and then we can, discriminate based on that.
Mhm.
So it's basically a way of introducing a mode of discrimination against people who aren't following whatever it is that the state of emergency and the diktats of the cartel,
Mhm.
uh, of the I'm going to call it just the control mechanism,
Mhm.
the totalitarian mechanism, what they want us to do. And so I think people got upset about it and people were worried about it. But now what's happening is so the same tech companies, so Peter Thiel and Palantir, Elon Musk, all of them are the same. There's no good or bad. Same with the
Mhm.
politicians. None of them are champions of the people. X is not a free speech platform. Sorry to inform everybody. It's just
It's a data collection, situation,
yes,
as much as anything else,
as much as
it's
anything else.
and I think that the mechanisms that were in place to track us during COVID, the passports, our biometrics, all of that, that system now exists, and we're all
Yes,
part of it. So
yes,
and I think it's easy to forget that it exists when we're not having to show our papers to go to the gym,
right.
so
That
it still exists. They didn't
still
wind
exists,
it back.
and it's being expanded,
Mhm.
and it's definitely being expanded into all areas. So going back to the state of emergency for energy and to the tech companies, so AI is the new biotech, meaning that AI is this technology that is ascribed that incredible powers and abilities are ascribed to this technology, same as biotech, same as the mRNA technology, gene therapies, and stuff like that. In my opinion, completely overblown, completely unrealistic.
So you
Um,
don't think and I'm not challenging you because I have an opinion on it. I have realized since this whole debacle, I don't know anything. I really don't know anything, and even what I think I know, I'm sure I don't know. So I'm just gonna ask, part of the justification for the state of emergency for energy is that we must win the AI arms race because if China wins it or if Russia wins it, so we must win it, so we must have the state of emergency to fuel this AI expansion.
right. I don't
Are
even
you
understand what that means. So when they say that, that is a complete uh, i- i-
This is the problem, we have no idea.
it doesn't mean anything, Joni.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't mean anything. So AI, what we have now as AI is a giant, giant computer with massive computing power. It's incredible. I
It
mean,
is
it is
incredible.
incredible what AI can do. There's several aspects of AI. Now, what people know as AI is LLMs, large language models. Large language models are predictive statistical computing systems that can compute. It is insane that they can do this. And I admit it, it's a crazy, amazing technology. They can compute the probability of words and groups of words, which to them are just pluses and minuses. It's
Right.
just symbols. It doesn't mean anything to the computer. They can predict which clusters of pluses and minuses um, go together to make a person, a human, think that that is a human, that that's human speech, that there's human language
Right.
processing going on. There is no language processing. It doesn't understand what it's saying. It doesn't understand meaning or context,
But
or insinuation or subtext. It understands nothing. So it's just a giant computing probability machine, which makes us think that because it gives us strings of symbols, which to us are meaningful. Symbols mean letters and words and sentences, and that contains meaning for humans. So we think that the computer understands the meaning behind
mhm.
those symbols, which it absolutely does not, and it never will. So when they say that somebody's winning the AI battle, not winning the AI battle. I don't the reason I don't understand what that means is because we already have the AI doing that stuff. There's not much. I mean, all we need now, and this is what they're building now, is we just need giant, giant computing centers,
Data
where they can
centers.
actually yes, so the data centers I'll get to in a second, but
Yeah.
even just to do that computation, you need so much energy to
To
do
run
the
it.
amount of computation, to run those systems takes so much energy. So the race is not about whether our AI is better than I don't even what is I don't see how an AI can be better or worse. I mean,
Mhm.
it can be better at mimicking human language and producing documents or producing research that looks like it's human. Um, but there's a maximum that it can achieve, and we're kinda there. I'm not sure what kind of more maximum. They talk about leaping from LLMs, which is large language models,
Mm.
to AGI, which
Right.
is artificial general intelligence. That is a fictional category that doesn't exist. So,
Really?
there's no such thing as AGI in reality. It doesn't exist. You can look it up. There's no AGI. AGI is a concept that at some point they'll tell you computers will reach that. It's a quantum leap. It's not a continuum because the continuum of LLMs is that they will just get better and better at making you think that they
Are
are, s-
human.
are human.
Yeah.
But they
So
aren't. But
so
AGI is where all of a sudden they can understand what their little symbol what the pluses
Mhm.
and minuses mean. They have a consciousness, they have a will, they have, agency and volition. Uh, Personally, I don't think that can ever happen, but even if it could, it hasn't happened yet,
Mm.
and if that's the race that we're supposed to be in a race with China on, it's the same as the race to genetically modify humanity, which I also don't believe is possible. So the mRNA vaccines were part of the attempt to, I mean, there were many things, but they were also part of the attempt to try to manipulate the genome, the human
Mhm.
genome, in various ways that they're very interested in. And this also, if we want to bring in the Epstein files, um, yeah, the
Yeah,
Epstein
wow.
files show us that that's something that the
It's a priority for yeah, these
power centers are very interested in this stuff.
they're crazy maniacs.
They're crazy maniacs, and
Yeah.
so throughout all of history, people have I describe AI, the AGI that they're talking about, and they like to talk about singularity at the
Mhm.
point at which, AI becomes conscious. Um, that is exactly the same as, the fountain of youth
I
and
was just gonna suggest that, yeah.
the sorcerer's stone. So the things that are supposed to get and alchemy. So I was
Right.
reading 100 Years of Solitude, and that's
Gabriel
about
Garcia Marquez.
it's about a village in Colombia, and they're just discovering. I think I don't even know what century it's in, but like maybe 1800s, 1700s. They're just discovering chemistry. So when humanity discovered chemistry, they discovered that we could take elements and we could apply either heat or mixing different things with each other, and we could get something else. So we could take a substance and turn it into something else. That's a godlike feeling. I mean,
Mhm.
like, you're a god if you can do that. Well, if you can do it with, copper and aluminum, then you obviously should be able to do it with gold, right? So that's sounds logical.
Right.
So you should be able to
Make
convert
gold.
make gold. You should be able to. Based on the logic of when we learned about chemistry, that seems logical, right? And that's what they spent all their time doing. And of course, they couldn't do it.
Mhm.
Same here with AI. It seems to some people logical that if a machine can imitate human speech in a way that makes us think that they're human, that somehow they're going to develop human consciousness. Um, it's the same as alchemy. It's not possible in my opinion.
I'm finding
Uh,
this very comforting, by the way.
it's extremely comforting.
Yeah,
It's extremely comforting,
so
Joni.
let's
It is very
it
comforting to
is.
think because their plans are somewhat contingent upon it. Now, let's go to what you were talking about with the data centers. So there's the computing power that they need, and there's the data centers where they need to store all the data.
On
Storing
us.
about us,
Right.
right? That's part of the surveillance and control. So that's something that AI can do, I think. And again, I don't know enough about how well it can do it, and it probably hopefully, might not be able to do it as well as they think, but
But it'll do it well enough.
it can
And they
sift
and
through.
they don't care if it's accurate. Like,
That's right.
if you get caught up in the wrong net, what do they care? They do not care
That's
about
exactly
us.
right.
So
That's exactly
Do you think this AI race narrative is a cover for under which we have to have a state of emergency for energy because we need energy to power these computing centers and data centers so that they can strengthen the control grid because there are more of us than there are them? Could it be that simple?
That is it. That's
Okay.
the answer. That's the answer.
Well, we're done
Uh,
here.
actually, that is okay, so let's complicate it a little bit. That is one answer
Hmm.
that I think is, a big one. The other answer is they really do think that they'll be able to upload their brains to a computer, and
Oh
because
God,
they
what a
think that.
horrifying desire. Who wouldn't want that?
Mhm, and because they want that, and they think that that ability will be reserved for them. It obviously won't be available for the rest of us, but they would need such an enormous databases just in their minds. I mean, it's not possible, but in their minds, they would need, like, such enormous databases, so that's a selfish reason for it. So there's the surveillance and the control, which I think is the first and most important one. Then there's that they really do think that they can upload their brains, so they need a lot of computing power for that.
Hmm.
Um and then other uses that they think they can put it to, uh, of course, military uses. So the military uses of AI, there's no race for that. It's just a matter of how much energy and how much of these data centers. So that would be the race, I
Hmm.
guess, that they're talking about. And if you think that we need to have more AI controlling drones and surveilling enemies so that we can take out the leadership of a country. Um, maybe that's a national security issue that you care about.
Well,
But
but
I think.
here again's the problem with all of that, it's just like the immigration thing, which I don't wanna get into either. It's just like anything, they herd us into one side or the other. Whatever you're cheering on, like, it's just setting up a structure for it to be used against you when you're stepping on the wrong side of the aisle, which, and then it just seems like there's divide and conquer, divide and conquer, divide and conquer, which has happened, since, like you said, they had this organic populist coalition who and it's been, I don't know that you can even hang on to one because people I think in the case of, like, the Maha, and I'm kind of veering off here because I think about this a lot. You have some magical thinking because you really want for something to be true. You really want to believe. And I still go back and forth. Like Kennedy in office, it's the best we're ever gonna do. What does that even mean? You have somebody in there who's talking about the capture of these institutions. That's revolutionary, it's amazing. You wanna believe it. You wanna believe it. You wanna believe in the integrity of these people and that they have the power to do something, and so I can understand the impulse to say, "Let's not criticize so much because we gotta let them do their jobs. We gotta, support this ship." I think it's unfortunately, I think some of it's magical thinking, but where I still struggle, and maybe you can help me with this, is are there situations in which supporting somebody who is either their hands are tied because they're in a power structure and they're trying to do the best they can, or they're a face job actor for it, knowingly or unknowingly, right? Are there situations in which our efforts can be useful to support certain things because it does make a portion of the population's lives better? Or are we just ignoring the elephant in the room, which is we're being ushered into this digital, ghetto, this digital Siberia, so to speak, I guess. Maybe I'm using that term wrong. Prison.
Mm, mhm, mhm.
Like, how
Um,
do you balance those things? I mean, just because I think of certain things like in the state of Florida, say what you want about DeSantis, maybe he's, part of it, whatever. They had more freedoms during COVID. Their lives were better. They had some options that in New York they didn't have. There's certain like our water is fluoridated here. I would like to get the fluoride out of our water. There are certain things I think people can do and support, but how do you keep your eye on the prize while doing that? To me, that's the really difficult question.
mhm. Yeah, I
Or
mean, I
maybe
think that.
I'm unwilling to go all the way with it because I don't wanna see the world as but I can't help it. I mean, I think you're right about everything, but
Well,
anyway,
so
go on.
that's why it's so hard. Have you heard of David Hughes? David Hughes is a
I'm
British guy. He wrote a really great book about COVID and propaganda, and it has another one coming out. And uh, he has a really good way of describing how our minds and our attitudes are manipulated through propaganda into 3 camps. He describes 3 camps. And camp 1 is the camp where, I was for all my life, where you just believe everything that you hear. Believe
from the mainstream sources.
the media. So
Yes,
you believe either the New York Times and NPR, or you believe Fox News,
in the Wall
you
Street Journal, yeah.
either one. So you just believe whatever you read and hear, and you're happy, because you don't question it, and you think that the media and the institutions are there for your benefit, that they're basically either benign
Mhm,
or good,
mhm,
but definitely not working against you, and they definitely don't want to harm you.
mhm.
Um, then there's camp 3. In
Wait, what
camp
about Camp 2?
I'm gonna skip camp
Oh,
2 for a
okay.
second. I'm gonna jump right to camp 3. Camp 3 is where you wake up in camp 1, like I did during COVID. I'm just using myself as an example, and you realize that all of what I just said is the opposite. So everything that I'm being told in my media is a lie, and they are not benign, and they are definitely not there for my benefit, and they're also possibly interested in intentionally harming me, and even if it's not intentional, they're not gonna stop it if I do get harmed by the things that they do in order to get more power and more control. So in camp 3, there's no, you're beyond partisanship. You're a populist resistance movement like we had during COVID. So it's like it's not partisan. You understand that all political power is corrupt. You understand that all political power these days, nowadays, in the first quarter of the 21st century, is all a corporate controlled
Mhm.
public-private partnership.
Yeah, I wonder where
And
Antifa is these days on these things. You know, it is. It's a cabal of private, public, and it's been
right?
yeah, anyway, go
And so
on.
you realize these things, and you realize that participating in the system is always giving power to the system. And so what you want to do what I want to do, I'll talk for myself in camp
Mhm,
3, just make people aware that the system is not ever going to work in our favor, and it is designed at this point in in history, in the history of Western capitalist societies, it is now designed to give be used by the richest, most powerful people and entities in order to get more resources and power. That's what the system is there for, to let people who have money and power get more money and power. So, what I would do in camp 3 is I try to expose instances in which that's happening where I feel like people aren't aware of it or can't see it. And Camp 3 is a really, really hard place to be because there's not a lot of optimism about the system. There's no optimism about the system. The only optimism is about if we all did get together
right.
and did realize that the system was working against us, then we could probably do something about it. However, most people who wake up in Camp 1 end up in Camp 2. Camp 2 is set up intentionally by power centers and structures that are propagandizing us in Camp 1 in order to make sure that if somebody does wake up in Camp 1, they don't get to Camp 3. So they will be in a place where they think they're aware, they know that the New York Times is lying, and they know, or they used to know, that the Wall Street Journal and Fox News were lying, but all of a sudden now they're being told, "Oh, actually, it was really only the New York Times and NPR that were lying." But there's another side, and that other side is good. And those politicians on the other side are good. And we can, work in the system to do things like take fluoride out of the water, or, I mean,
Get
take
I mean, the
dyes
list is endless.
dyes out of food or something.
or
That's
even
actually
bigger things, not even what are relatively trivial things like the 2 things you just mentioned, which I don't think are trivial, but on the scheme of things, we can work to stop these wars or stop, the data center, bigger projects too. I mean,
yeah, so we think that if we go with one side or the other. So in Camp 2, it's the same propaganda, it's more insidious, and so there are people who are gatekeepers who are put in place, so that when people wake up in Camp 1, the gatekeepers steer them into Camp 2. Uh, and so I can mention some that, I don't know if any of your viewers might like, but, people like Robert Malone
Mhm.
are Camp 2 gatekeepers.
Do you think
Uh,
that it keep and I don't want you to self-censor because of what you anticipate. I don't even know what my audience likes or doesn't like, and
okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean
I'd rather keep it that way because I wanna discuss a variety of things, and I don't wanna be bound by the camp.
yeah,
I don't wanna be bound by that, truly. So,
okay.
I'm interested in all takes, and I want you to go through all of what you were gonna say, and then I wanna ask the question, do people in those positions, do they realize they are gatekeepers? Do they not realize they are? Like, because that's another question. Who is witting or unwitting, you know? So, anyway, please
That's a
continue
really good question.
without self-censorship.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah, I shouldn't self-censor, I'm sorry.
Well, you don't have to be sorry about be
I
sorry.
mean,
Don't be sorry.
I shouldn't assume that there are things that you or your audience doesn't wanna hear.
But I can
So
understand why you would. I mean, it's such a tricky, environment right now with everything. So, no, I wanna discuss things freely. I don't there's no idea I don't wanna consider.
okay, thank you.
So go.
So the gatekeepers, and I'm using Robert Malone as an example because, um, it's somebody who is set up to be a trusted, voice of opposition and,
A hero to many.
a hero and
Mm.
somebody who, says a lot of the right things, but when it comes down to actually overthrowing the power structure or, for instance, repealing or, ending laws like states of emergency and stuff like that, they will be there to make sure that that doesn't happen, and they'll also be there to make sure that, people are diverted away from the civil rights.
Argument.
We talk again about the COVID resistance as a civil rights movement, which I do believe it was. So now nobody's talking about, what about well, I mean, some people are still talking about it, but nothing is being done, and we're not pressuring, our so-called our people
Our
in
people. Mhm.
power. We're not pressuring our people to do anything about it, in terms of the legal structures that enabled COVID and that are enabling the stuff that's happening now. But we are being geared towards being angry at Biden and the Democrats. And we're being told that there are tranny sharpshooters and like that there are these radical trans um, violent extremists who are shooting everywhere. I mean, it is so absurd, Joni, the things that are being said and that are it's just as absurd as the propaganda that people believed during COVID,
Mhm.
um, about masks and about distancing. It's completely absurd, but it makes people angry and it riles people up and it makes people distracted from what's actually happening. Same with the wars. I mean, same with everybody should be out in the streets protesting this. Nobody should be in favor of this.
Right.
Uh, and certainly, I don't think that that's what the people who elected Trump were expecting. I've seen a lot of quotes from Trump and during the campaign, and
Oh, he was gonna be the peace president. I mean, he was highly critical of Obama on like, all of the things he ran on, he's totally reversed, particularly with this war, and I see people contorting themselves to justify this war. And some of the arguments, you think, oh, well, maybe I don't know enough and this and that. But at the bottom of it is that we should not be using our time, our treasure, our people, our humanity to go and kill other people in the name of anything. I mean, it's just wrong. And furthermore, anybody who cheers the war, I feel like they should send their own kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen any photos of Barron Trump on the front lines or Chuck Schumer's relatives on the front. I haven't seen those photos. I don't know where they might be. I'm with you, and I we should all be anti-war. I mean, that is part of the reason that Trump was elected is because people wanted this to stop. And
Right, but
and
now that people are in camp 2 and they're being told that it's a 10D chess and, uh,
I
you
think we're
know
at like 100 D chess by now. You're so behind.
they can so once you're in camp 2, anything like you said, like, maybe we don't know enough, maybe Iran is the worst regime on the planet, even though our allies in Saudi Arabia and the Emirates and stuff are horrible, horrible tyrant regimes. I I don't even wanna talk about it because it's all just oligarchs with oligarchs. So,
Right.
Jared Kushner is best friends with the Saudi prince, who's best friends with Netanyahu,
It's a big club.
so a
Yeah,
whole who are best friends with the, global oligarchy and the global corporations. That's it. It doesn't have to do with nation states anymore,
right.
so doesn't have to do with the United States anymore, so anybody who thinks that there's anything about the United States interests that's involved here, I mean, is sorely, sorely mistaken.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
agree with that. But back to the Camp 1, Pack 2, Camp 3. Um, what you're laying out is very chilling, and sad and rings extremely true. I will get that book and I'll link to it in the show notes. What do you do then in Camp 3? How do you
uh,
live? How do you 'cause I what do you do?
yeah, it's really hard. You don't sleep. Actually, so
Great. I can't wait to come on over.
right? No. So, for me, I'm gonna talk about me in Camp 3. It's lonely because, um, I'm called, black-pilled and nihilist and, uh, you can't be hopeless. We have to support our people, and they're gonna do things that are good. Um, and first of all, I think black-pilled is the new term for conspiracy theorists. So black-pilled is
Ah,
when somebody's
yeah,
saying something that's true and you don't wanna hear it. So I'm
because
happy to
it's
be
very
black-pilled.
dark. I mean,
It's
you
very
know
dark, just like during COVID, if you said to a COVIDian, "The government is trying to kill you with these," or not trying to kill you, but even if it just doesn't care if these vaccines kill you, doesn't care, and it's gonna make you take it anyway, they would think that that was the darkest, craziest thing that
right.
they ever heard. I
Because it
probably
is
would have thought
very,
that
very dark. Yes.
it's very dark, but people wanna turn away from that darkness, but that darkness that we discovered during COVID is there and has been there and continues to be there. So just because and vaccines are still being given to millions of people,
Oh, yeah.
mothers, children. I mean, it's a little bit crazy to think about. So there's one giant harm that we know we can stop. It has fluoride and I mean, it kind of upsets me, the whole fluoride and food dye thing because, they used that, and it was very, very clear in the articles that I wrote before the election or right after when Bobby joined, Trump, and Kelly and Casey Means were the Maha face of that. I wrote a big articles about how their job, and it's not against them personally, it's just them as, actors in
Gatekeepers, maybe?
ours actually as yeah, it's yes, it's their job to take fury, the civil rights, um, momentum of the COVID resistance and turn it into a nothing burger, food dyes, food pyramids. It was very clear. I mean, they said those things. They said that we were in a long-term, you know, um chronic disease crisis, and that's what we should focus on. Now, yes, it's true that the
Right.
United States has a long-term chronic disease crisis, but the real crisis that we all cared about and that I still care about was the COVID crisis, which killed and injured people by the millions and still can't. I don't know. I think that they've changed formulations, and I have no idea what the formulations of the, jabs are now. and I don't know what the extent of the damage is. I know that the extent of the damage that was caused when they were rolled out was huge, and nobody is acknowledging that, trying to stop it. In fact, they want to approve the fact that mRNA is still a thing. mRNA needs to go in the garbage where it was before
Right.
COVID, right?
Well, I understand they're giving, they've gotten the go-ahead to give self-amplifying mRNA, which I don't really understand, to, animals, to pets, to
For
dogs and
instance.
cats, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's,
So 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 those are the things that we knew that are acute dangers. So I can show you the graphs, and I have an article on my stuff site that looks at the mortality and morbidity after the COVID shots. And you can see very clearly from the graphs, yes, yes, we have chronic disease, we have terrible, heart disease and cancer and all of that.
mhm,
But in 2021 and 2022, it spikes. s- There's an enormous spike in all of those things, in heart disease, in cancer, and in autoimmune diseases, in pregnancy issues, infertility.
fertility issues, yeah.
Huge, enormous, like
Geez, what could it be?
many magnitudes greater than the baseline of chronic disease epidemic, okay? So when Callie and Casey Mees and all of MAHA came out and said, "We are in a chronic disease epidemic," I went ballistic. I went ballistic. And I said, that's their job as gatekeepers, is to stop us from saying, "Okay, fine, that's all fine and good, but we need to stop the acute harm that's being done now."
Well, and
And
provide remedy for those
and
people
provide
who have
remedy.
been
First of all, acknowledge that it's being done.
right,
Provide remedy and prevent it. Those 3 things need to be done. Those are the 3 things that we should have insisted on as the medical freedom movement and should be continuing to insist on. I don't care if it's, I mean, when we say don't criticize our people in power, if we don't hold the fire under the feet of our people in power, nobody's going to,
right.
right? We're the only ones who can do that. So it's actually, when I got censored and I got ostracized for saying the things that I'm saying to you now, I realized that this I didn't understand the camp 1, camp 2, camp 3 structures. Again, that's David Hughes who um kind of clarified that.
Mhm.
But I realized that I was again in a system that did not allow free speech. So if you can't have free discussion, if I can't come to you and say, "Hey, I think that what's
Wait, hold on,
happening."
you just broke up a little bit. Say, "If I can't come to you and" you froze.
Oh, sorry. If I can't come to you and
Mhm.
say,
Okay.
uh, "Look what's happening. They're taking this movement, or this fake political construct is now coming and trying to take over our fury, our righteous anger, and
Our
our agenda."
genuine organic movement.
Our genuine nonpartisan organic movement, and it's trying to turn us into something else. If you can't have that discussion with me, it's fine. I'll listen. And if you won't listen, I'll listen to you. I mean, Maha's the one that's talking. But if you can't listen to me and address my concerns, it's exactly the same as the people during COVID who I would say to them, like, masks don't work, social distancing is nonsense. And they would say, "Oh, are you a Trumpist?" Like, right?
Right,
They're not
right, it
addressing
gets
the issue.
reduced yeah, they
They're
won't discuss.
censoring the issue. They're calling me names. So now they were calling me a trumpet, so they didn't wanna talk about masks, and now they're calling me black pill because they don't wanna talk about, the gatekeepers who are not going to allow us to pursue our agenda.
And
And
I'm not
so
even sure the agenda exists anymore.
it doesn't.
And I think your characteristic of the COVID, the organic movement there as a civil rights movement. I had never really thought about it with that label before, but it's very clarifying. It's crystal clear. It was a civil rights movement because people were concerned with bodily autonomy, freedom to choose, informed consent, freedom to speak, freedom to all of those things that are all civil rights. And that if we continue to press for and fixed those issues, the other things would fall away. But here we are in camp 2, and, I have to admit, I'm a Camp 2 person in many respects because I think I'm maybe I won't be after we hang up, but I I'm still trying to find a way where I can do something good, to
You're doing
make a
something good. You're
change.
ha So here's what we can do. So again, so you asked, what do you do in Camp
Yeah, what
3?
do you
Do
do in Camp 3?
you have
What are the activities in Camp 3 if I'm gonna go to Camp 3?
so the activities in Camp 3 are not participating in political campaigns, not making excuses for anyone, whether it's our people or not our people. It is criticizing, or not just criticizing, just uncovering corruption and abuse of power wherever they occur. That's it. If all did all day was uncover corruption and abuse of power everywhere, not
Mhm.
just on the other side,
Right.
not just in the people who are not our friends, then Camp 3 would actually not be a lonely place. I wouldn't have be labeled all kinds of things. We would all be in a civil rights movement together. Okay. So I think Camp 3 is where the civil rights movement can happen if enough people are willing to abandon the false hope of Camp 2. I understand why people don't want to abandon it. I understand why you don't want to be in Camp 3, and I understand why you people are looking for ways to work within the system, because we've been told all our lives that the system is there for us. And I always believed it. I mean, I didn't even question. I don't even think it would ever cross my mind to think, well, government and the scientific institutions, the medical system, the educational system, is not there for my benefit. I just assumed it was there for my benefit. And now I know it might have been put in place with some ideals that had to
Sure.
do with public benefit, but
Some guardrails.
in any system
Yeah.
where power can accrue to a small elite, that small elite is going to try to get more and more power. Like, unless the system is resilient enough to prevent that, to prevent the corruption. If the corruption can't be prevented, which at this point it absolutely cannot be prevented,
Mhm.
it's
Well, it's
going
baked
to,
in, it's built in. I mean, because we allowed the steady erosion of
yeah,
all of our constitutional rights a little and a little and a little and all at once, you know? It's like
that's
going broke, right?
that's right, and that's exactly what the militarization and the states of emergency, just to kind of go full circle,
Yeah.
that's what that is. So the more we allow those kinds of things, the states of emergency, the militarization. So basically, what COVID also did was it normalized military grade force being used against civilian populations, so against protesters and stuff, and also the military and NATO and intelligence agencies like intelligence licenses, they were the ones who were running the operation. So it wasn't a public health
Right.
operation at all. And so it normalized that things in society should be run by the military and the intelligence. So now AI, by the way, the government, the public-private partnerships around AI, it's all about national security,
Right.
right? So COVID was a national security threat. That's why we had to have the military and intelligence, biodefense in charge. And now AI,
It's a
China,
national
hey, it's a national security threat. So now we have to have the military and intelligence in charge. It's the same
sa
thing.
same
But
playbook over and over.
this time, I also recently have been the way that I've been describing it is during COVID, they taught people to want military and police force to be used. So they taught people during COVID to want the police to come and arrest someone who wasn't wearing a mask.
Mhm.
So half the population would cheer that,
Well,
right?
and they'd
They
also, facilitate it
would,
by calling them, you know?
right? So they would
Yeah.
call them, they would tell them. So they made us want our own oppression. So they made that on the side of the people who were propagandized for COVID. Now, people on the other side, Camp 2, they didn't get to Camp 3, they are cheering it and they are wanting it. And they are asking for it for illegal immigration,
Oh, yeah, that's a
for
masterstroke.
the war with against China, the AI, war with China or the war with Iran. So everybody is taught on both sides, and that's what Camp 2 is there for, to
Right.
want to be oppressed.
right, because it's there like, my friend Monica always says, the people at the top behind all the face jobs, they're making a
Mhm.
mosaic, and I say this all the time because I just think it's brilliant. They have red tiles and blue tiles, let's just say, or, whatever the binary is. And they don't care if it's Biden putting the blue tiles in place of opening the border so that you create the problem and making COVID a tyranny so you create the problem. They don't care if it's red or blue. They'll just do under that administration the things that the base who elected those people would never otherwise accept. And so now with what's happening under Trump, people are cheering real ID. They're cheering ICE going into communities because illegal immigration was an issue for them. So now they get to put that in place. It's so clear once you see it, but in my situation, I always backslide because I still wanna be able to work within the system to get something done, I'm just that way, but, Camp 3 is looking inevitable, Debbie.
Yeah, I mean,
I hope the
for
food's
me
good there. I mean
the food and the parties are great because nobody has to pretend. There's no pretense in Camp Free. You can't
Yeah,
pretend, and
you don't have to censor.
you don't have to censor, and you don't have to, support anything at all, really, except truth.
Yeah.
So it's really, uh, Sasha Latypova, who I work with a lot,
Mhm.
says basically when people ask her, "What do we do? What do we do?" Her answer is, "First, just look for the truth." That's it.
Yeah.
And we did that during COVID. And if you continue to do that, you'll get to the same place and you'll get the same answers. And that's okay. We survived COVID by being so that's the really heartbreaking thing
Yeah.
is we survived COVID by all of those of us who sought the truth during COVID being together. Those of us who continued to seek the truth got ejected, and it would be nice if more people continued to seek the same truth that we all sought together during COVID. We would all be together again in a giant civil rights movement
Mhm.
uh, that might actually be able to accomplish something.
Yeah.
And so, what you're doing, which is awesome, which is just having conversations and seeking the truth, and like you said, being open to anything, and I was mistaken in assuming, that because 'cause I'm so used to people not wanting to hear certain things,
Sure.
um, in Camp 2, but it's fine if you understand the 3 camps, and I'm sure it's not a perfect description, I'm sure that there are ways in which it's not perfectly describing it, but for me,
Yeah, but it's pretty good. It's
it's a
pretty
good
good.
frame. But
Yeah.
if you understand that you're in camp 2 and you say, "Yeah," like you said, like, "I don't wanna leave camp 2." I also don't wanna leave camp 2. I wish I had
I didn't wanna leave
some
Camp 1, Debbie.
I wanna be back in camp 1. I really do. I really, really, really long for the days of camp 1, because, um, I thought everything was fine, and it's
Yeah.
much nicer to live thinking but
Right.
because of that, I could get hoodwinked. So the reason why it's actually, I think, much, much better and safer to be in Camp 3 is that I'm not gonna get hoodwinked again.
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna waste my time. So I'm gonna spend my time and energy in Camp 3 just, in doing local stuff like everybody always talks about. We need to do
Right.
our local communities, and it's not a local community that has to do with a political position or a candidate or a savior or a hero. It doesn't have to do with that at all. It's about reclaiming our own sovereignty and our own power and our own ability to run things on a local level. And I think if people use their energy to do that instead of supporting our people in power and making excuses and trying to twist yourself in pretzels, like you said, to try to figure out why what they're doing actually makes sense when we all know
Right.
that it doesn't.
Right.
Uh, it does make a lot of sense. And it makes a lot of sense if you understand that they're not doing it for you.
Oh, certainly not.
Right?
Certainly
I
not.
mean, if you
Yeah.
understand that the power structure is working to get more power and more resources, then everything makes total sense. I mean, the war right now makes total sense. In that, it doesn't make sense if you think it's about America first. It doesn't make sense if you think it's about our interests, about the American people, about the Iranian people, about it doesn't make any sense at all, but it does make perfect sense if you understand what the power structure is trying to do and what their interests are. And if you understand that their interests are always diametrically opposed
Mhm.
to yours. And anyone, including RFK, including Jay Bhattacharya, including people who I admire and, you know, think thought we're good people, and I don't know now what to think anymore. Um, uh, if they stayed out of the structure. So my answer to them was, and my answer always was, why are you taking that job? Like people would ask me, well, what's your advice? What would you say to RFK? What would you say to Jay? Don't take the job. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Like if you take the job, it's over. It's completely over. Your voice, no matter what you say, is going to be part of the system. And when you're outside the system, you're so much more powerful.
Yeah, and it would be a tricky choice for most people. What you say has real truth. But I think, again, if you're in camp 2, you're taking the job,
Right.
right?
I
So they recruit from camp 2. They do not recruit from camp 3. The camp 3 people wouldn't take the job.
no, that's
Ugh,
true.
my
That's
whole
true.
my whole view of the world now is set, the camp view. I always wanted to go to camp as a kid, and now I get to go to camp, so thank you. I was so jealous of my friends who got to go to camp.
Yeah.
So this was a great conversation, Debbie. We went in places I didn't expect to go, and I always learn so much from you, and I welcome your Camp 3 views because I'm trying to figure it out, and I really am at a place where I find the right left dialectic useless and injurious to people, but I still feel the tractor pull, the tractor beam of getting caught up in that often. So yeah. What do you
Well,
do?
you're I
Mhm.
wanna also, like, I think one of the things that I get accused of, and so I'm gonna say I understand that it sounds like I really know like, I have some kind of this certainty and everybody else is deluded and doesn't know what's going on. So I just wanna say I acknowledge that it sounds like that, and I understand that that can be off-putting and that, it sounds as if I'm a know-it-all and I have all the answers. I don't really have any answers at all. I think um, it sounds like that because I'm saying that you got to pursue the truth and you got to pursue what's happening no
Mhm.
matter what side you're on. And so it sounds like I know what the truth is. um, I know what is not the truth,
Mhm.
I know when I'm being propagandized and when I'm being, they're trying to steer me like in camp 2. So I don't know, maybe in another conversation we can talk about it because 'cause you're probably a good person to, brainstorm with
Mm, thank
about
you.
how to make it someone in camp 3 who's talking the way that I do not sound like I'm, like, such a self-righteous bitch. You know?
You want me to do a little PR, some,
I want you to
image
help me.
handling for you?
I don't know, like, yeah, exactly,
Oh
exactly.
gosh, that's really
Uh,
rich, me, doing that. No, I don't I think, to me, what you're saying is the basic truth. It's tale as old as time. The world is run by people who have power, and people never give up power. Well, some people might if they have a change of heart, but so that's relentless. Yeah, I don't know. I think you have to be passionate about what you see as the truth. One has to be, otherwise, you never say it. Um, and I get the sense that you're wise enough to know that certainty is an Achilles heel. And if your certainty is about always seeking the truth, then how can you go wrong? You have to always keep check not you, but one has to always check oneself, because when the truth you're seeking starts becoming self-reinforcing and feels really good, you know, but I don't know, I don't get that sense from you, but I'll be happy to work up a proposal on,
yeah.
what is it?
How about
Image.
Camp 3 image? Image.
What is it called when somebody is, I guess, your PR agent on Camp 3 or, I don't know.
Yes,
I'm
just
not the
to
person.
go to Camp 3 so that we can, be a little bit less, I don't know, off-putting or intimidating or,
Well, the
you know,
problem with
are
that is then you
are
slide
we
back
are.
into Camp 2. So,
Yeah, well, it's good. So I think that the way that you and I are talking, which is across Camp 2 and Camp 3, is the way that I'm hoping to be able to have conversations.
yeah, and I want
I
just more conversations
Yeah, yeah.
with
So,
thinking people, and you are clearly one of them. So, I really thank you. Before we break, where can people find you? And any suggested reading? You said 100 Years of Solitude, one of my favorites. I'll pick it up again. But yeah, where can people find you, Debbie?
just on Substack right now, debbielerman.substack.com. My book is called, The
The
Deep
Deep
State Goes
State Goes
Viral.
Viral.
So that's, it's it came out in May, so it's almost a year already.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I don't have any, book right now in the works, but just some articles. So,
Are there any articles in particular you'd like to point people toward, or just your general body of work on Substack?
I think just Substack. Yeah.
Okay, great. And you are wisely not on X. So,
No
yeah.
social media.
All right. Well, it was a delight, and we're going to do this again because every time it's peeling back the layer. So, I really appreciate it, Debbie.
Thanks, Joni. Me
All
too.
right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.